Live.
Julie. Julie.
Hey,
Julie, we're live.
we're live? Okay, I'm going to tweet it out now.
Okay. See, I mean, how many different places can you be in at one time? I mean, you can be live here. But now that you're live, you have to say, oh, excuse me, I can't be live anymore. I have to tweet.
Okay, hold on. Let me post this. Got it. Okay, now I'm here.
I know. So there's a book I read several years ago that said something like, the title of it was something like somewhere else. And the thesis is that we're always somewhere else now, other than where we are, It's some atavistic reactionary, techno-resenting book. But here you are. Julie, the last time I think you and I actually sat down for a serious conversation was about 3 years ago. I mean, yeah, you were about 16 years old or something like that, and I was 20.
At the Freedom Works office?
Yeah.
That was a couple years ago. I remember that,
yeah. No, there was a funny thing because, we hung out, right? And we talked about entrepreneurship and enterprise, and it was fun. And then at that meeting, somebody said, now that you're here, you really should go next door because there's a conference going on called the International Students for Liberty something. And I'd never heard of this group, and I thought, well, okay, all right. So I went next door. Did you go to that? Did you go to the ISFLC that year?
Yeah, I've been going for like 5 or 6 years.
Okay, so I went that year, and I walked in and I said, hi, gosh, I'm just stumbled in off the street. Is it possible for me to attend this conference? And the lady said, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe so. She checked it out, and she came back. She said, yeah, it's $60. So I wrote a check, and started attending. And then a few minutes later, somebody came whispering to her, I guess, information of some relevance, that I was not just some person who stumbled in off the street,
Yeah.
And yeah, so she was mortified. It's very silly. So silly. So you're opening up your new channel. Tell me the story. What's going on?
Sure. So a couple of weeks ago, I actually left Freedom Works to go freelance. So I've started my own website. It's julieborowski.com. It's my name. So I'm gonna put content out like every single day, whether it's an article or a video. So I'm still doing my YouTube channel, but hopefully I can do at least 1 or 2 videos a week. So I'm really excited about that. And I can say whatever I want, which is awesome. I can talk about the current issues of the day, whatever that be. So yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Every day is very ambitious. You mean every weekday?
Well, I was always working on the weekend, making my YouTube channel, so I'm kind of used to it. Yeah, it's Liberty 24/7.
That's so cool. Some people find that editing the video takes so long. How did you go through your sort of learning process as a video editor? It's one thing to turn on a camera and make a video.
A lot of people don't realize how long it takes just to make one video. Even if it's just like a 3 or 4 minute video, it takes a while because first you have to write what you're going to say. We got to think of a topic first, and how can I say this in a way that's short? Because my videos, I try to make them really short and to the point. So I got to write this out, and then I got to record it. And I record what I say a few different times just in case I mispronounce something, I'm talking too fast, things like that. And then I have to edit it. Editing is the hardest part because I have to look, okay, what sounds good? Am I making a better face here or a better face there? I got to put music on there. I got to do text, and I have to make it all look good. And then I put it out. So editing is the hardest part. Filming doesn't take that long. I like to write. Writing is my passion. That's my favorite part. But yeah, editing takes a while.
Where did you learn video editing? It's just sort of a hit and miss. I mean, sort of trial and error, or what? I mean, I mean, you're not a trained video person.
No. I kind of just started on my own actually in college. I had Windows Movie Maker, and I would just make silly videos for my friends, like on their birthdays and stuff, of me doing silly stuff, and I would edit it on there and I would post it on their Facebook wall. So I knew how to do that. And I started a YouTube channel. I just started to do the same. Like, I have no professional knowledge of it. I just kind of learned it myself.
And when I'm curious about this, because, well, it's a little bit of a puzzle. Sometimes I'll write out a text, but, you know, and then start the camera, but I don't always remember what I wrote, and I find it awkward to sort of read and also be on camera. Are you, when you do your videos, are you reading, or are you kind of being extemporaneous?
No, I write everything beforehand so I know what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it. Then I just kind of say it in my head and what order, and I just do it that way. Yeah, if you read it, it just looks like you're reading. It's just like, blah, 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 blah. It's not entertaining. So I try to memorize it the best I can. Like, it's not perfect sometimes, so that's why I like videos, because you can at least go over it again as opposed to live interviews, which is
Well,
always
that's true,
good.
because all your videos always have these little cuts and things which you've
Yeah.
managed to make
People like
interesting.
that on YouTube. It, like,
Yeah.
gets their attention.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's a funny style, but it's also advantageous to just to keep on topic and to be able to cut and paste what's good versus what didn't work, right?
Definitely.
So Julie, I'm curious about this because lots of people sort of start these kind of projects and get demoralized at the amount of flurry of attacks, or, you know, the way in which, you know, people sort of really critical, and how you become sort of the subject of flame wars and that sort of thing. You know, how do you think you have a personality that somehow immunizes you to some extent, or did you have to learn to develop thicker skin, or, you know, like, how do you deal with, because I mean, obviously you're saying things that lead to, you know, a lot of frenzy, opposition, and, you know, that sort of thing. Like how do you process that and make that part of your life in a way that preserves normalcy, or do you?
You grow thicker skin over time. When I first started, I was kind of hesitant because YouTube comments are very terrible. They're very personal. So when I first started my channel, I would get those comments, and it would affect me. When people would call me, "Oh, you're ugly," "Your voice is terrible," like those things. Like, I had never really heard people say that about me. You know, when you talk to people in person, they're generally pretty nice to you. They might talk behind your back, but to hear it, or at least to read it, it's like, what? But over the years, you just get used to it. Like, there's nothing I haven't heard about me. And in a way, it makes you more confident about yourself, because you're just like, I've heard this before. And some people compliment me even online. So you just really get used to it. And you're used to being attacked from both sides. Like, I get attacked from conservatives, I get attacked from liberals, and I get attacked from libertarians a lot, actually, probably more than either side. But
More libertarians than anybody else, right? Yeah.
I
This I
mean,
believe.
yeah, it's becoming less so, which I think is good, because if only libertarians attack me, it means that only libertarians are watching my stuff. So it's
Good
actually
point.
good when I get attacked from outside. It's like, okay, at least people besides people who already agree with me are watching my videos. Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, but you know, it is alarming for people who first enter this world. It can shake you up, right? You know, any performance artist faces this. I know. I used to direct a choir, and I remember I would get, you know, like 100 compliments, and then one person who would say, you know, you guys could work on your intonation a little bit,
Yeah,
and what I would take away from
you'll
that,
remember that, not the
yeah,
compliment. Yeah.
it's like, ooh, you know, it hurts, and you're like, well, wait a minute, it's 1 out of 100. Why am I worried about it? But still, it somehow it does penetrate.
It's in your head, and you're just like, no. Yeah, I think that's just human nature, that we respond more to negative than positive. Like you were saying, I'll get 100 compliments. Oh, great video, and then one person will say, not your best. It's like, what? Even if it's not really that bad, you just remember that comment and you're like, I tried really hard, I promise you.
And isn't it interesting that so Julie, this is sort of advice for trolls out there, but I get people writing me and saying, shut up, you dumbass, you have no idea what you're talking about, go, and like insulting, and it never affects me at all. Like, I just go, yeah, whatever. But when somebody says this article is not as well thought out as the quality of I've come to expect of your writing, that one I remember. I mean, that one I take serious, and then so same thing for you.
Yeah, when someone will say you're better than this, or I expected better from you, it's like, ouch.
Yeah, it's the very cautious ones. It's if somebody calls you some name or whatever, just whatever. Anybody could do that, but a thoughtful critique really does affect you in some way. Yeah, but still, I mean, you deal with an inordinate amount of this stuff, and I do find it kind of awesome, because despite all of the frenzy your videos have created, you keep making them, and you don't shrink back from controversy, and nor do you sort of seek it out, right? I mean, you somehow how do you find that balance between like being overly cautious for fear of criticism, or being like an attention monger? How do you sort that out, or do you even worry about that?
I make sure I actually believe what I say. As strange as that might sound, because I think a lot of people, they just kind of want that attention. They want to be edgy, to get people to like their post, to share their post. Some of my opinions are controversial, but I make sure that I actually believe those. I'm not just saying something just to rival people up and get them mad. I'm saying actually my own opinion about things. And I try not to be so partisan. Like I read a lot of conservative blogs because I'm trying to reach out to those people, and a lot of their blogs are they're trying to just attack liberals, like, oh, liberals are stupid, liberals are this, liberals are that. And it's like, well, you're not actually contributing anything to the conversation. I try to have a fair approach to things. Both sides really don't like that at times, but I try to at least be fair, and I'm saying things I actually believe in.
Well, let me ask you about that, because I find this is true for almost all commentary across the political spectrum. Like as a dedicated anarchist myself, I believe the key problem with the world is the state, right? And not anybody else. It's just the structure. I mean, there's plenty of problems in the world besides the state, but that's the main one, right? But don't you think that there's a sense in which our political discussions sort of get distracted by thinking that the problem is are people who disagree with us, rather than this overarching institutional structure? I mean, do you agree that there's a distinction there? Like, the problem with the world isn't that people don't agree with me. I mean, the problem is the actual agency of oppression and exploitation that we call the government, and that sometimes democracy can kind of distract us from that fact.
Yeah, definitely. I see it all the time where people are saying the other side's the problem, whether it be liberals, conservatives, even, libertarians, we attack the other side. And it's like, these people aren't bad people. Like, I used to believe a lot of the stuff they believed in. I realized that I was wrong about that, but that doesn't make them bad people. And I think a lot of people they don't listen to the other people just because, oh, they're different than me, so they have no good points, they're stupid, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I think it is distracting.
Yeah, I'm afraid the libertarians get sort of dragged down. Of course, if you're libertarian, your main job is to attack other libertarians, as we well know. And, and I hope you're doing a good job of that, Julie. That's been going on for 50 years, What's happened to your opinions since we last had a chance to sit down and talk, 2 or 3 years ago? Do you feel like you're becoming I mean, what is the trajectory of Julie Borowski in terms of your ideology? Do are you becoming more libertarian? Less so. I mean, where are you headed? Do you think intellectually?
Um, 2 or 3 years ago, I probably believed about the same amount of things I do now. I think now I realize there's a different way to approach issues. Whereas I think back in the day, especially like in 2007, 2008, when I was really getting involved in libertarianism through the Ron Paul campaign, I kind of just wanted to, how do you say this, just throw bombs. I just wanted to be kind of outrageous in what I was saying. And now I've kind of, not that I've toned down my opinions, but I've toned down my approach on how to reach other people. I think that's really been my biggest change over the past couple years. Like I was saying, my whole thing is not to piss people off for no good reason, to basically explain my views, and I can explain it from their views too, why they should be a libertarian. Not the whole, I'm a libertarian, I'm right, I'm correct on everything, you should be a libertarian, but really trying to explain it better. And I think that's probably been my biggest change over the past couple of years.
And that comes out of experience more than anything, or
Yeah,
maturity, or what?
I'm 26, but like you were saying, back in the day, when I started my YouTube channel, the only people who really watched me were libertarians. So they already agreed with me, and I love libertarians. But as my channel started to grow, other people came on and were watching my videos. And it was like, well, what is my point here? Is my point to reach other people or just to go on about how smart I am? And I realized that I should be doing more to reach other people. So that's kind of been my thing. Probably over the past couple of years, I realized that I have an opportunity through my YouTube channel to reach other people. So I don't do this, I'm smart, blah, 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 but really I tried to explain it in a way that other people understand.
Yeah, and it can be difficult. How much time do you spend reading bigger works and higher theory and that sort of thing, or versus just consuming daily content on the internet? Do you ever worry that you're sort of too involved in the fray and long for a time when you can sort of sit down and then think about the big topics?
Yeah, I probably should do more of that. A lot of things I do is just daily reading what's happening in the world. Because what I tried to do is to put a libertarian spin on whatever is current at that issue at that time. When you talk about current events in YouTube channels and you write blog posts about current events, usually those get more hits than just theory and stuff like that. So I tried to tie libertarian events to current events. I realized that really works. I do probably need to sit down and read more longer books about theory. I know that, but I like to do the current events. A lot of the stuff that I do is actually just reading blog posts, watching YouTube videos from people who are outside the libertarian world, and how are they doing it? How are they reaching other people, and how can I
Mm.
do that?
Yeah. So you pay attention to like what a lot of other libertarian or conservative and liberal YouTube commentators are
Yeah.
saying, and learn from their techniques, and that becomes a kind of a source for you, revs
Hmm.
you up. How do you know when you're ready to have an opinion? I mean, is it like, for me, I I can almost feel it physically. Like I suddenly start to like intensely care about something, and then it's like my best stuff comes when I'm like reading something and I think, okay, there's a mistake, there's an error, here's what's wrong, and I feel this sort of adrenaline rush and a passionate desire to speak about it. Those articles are the ones that have the biggest impact, as versus my overly calm, thoughtful, reflective articles like the one I posted today on Henry George that nobody is going to ever care about. I get that, but has that been true for you too? Like when you feel this sense of frenzy,
Yeah.
and drop it out there.
Yeah, I think you kind of feel it in your gut when you're reading something. You're like, oh, it's kind of like this light bulb that goes off, and you just have to write about it or you have to make a video about it. And those are just like the quickest things to do. You get a post done in like 20 minutes, as opposed to if I'm thinking about something and writing something over a couple hours, I know that I'm not really that passionate about it. And also, I've learned not to take an opinion on every single issue. There are things that I don't know and that I can. It's a lot of people ask me, "What's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on that?" Like I've learned to be like, "I don't know," and I think it even makes it
Awesome.
more credible because people are like, "Okay, she's being honest here. She really doesn't know."
Yeah. Yeah. Well, uh, and it's of course tempting to pretend to know all things, right?
Mhm.
It happens to all of us. But it's true that I don't know. Maybe the older you get, you know, the more you realize, you know, how little you know actually.
Yeah.
But also the less cautious you are about speaking about every single subject. Now, tell me, have you ever made a video or written an article that you had some sense that this was going to be it? This was the one that's going to be epic, you know, and just be shared all over, and then it just died, and you know, like within minutes, you felt it that like, whoops, that didn't work.
Um, yeah. Um, you know, sometimes you don't know how people are going to react to things. Sometimes you think something's going to be awesome and everyone's going to love it, and not really. And sometimes you think something isn't that good. You're like, okay, well, I wrote this already. I made a video on this. I'm going to put this out. And then people love it. And you're like, dang it, I could have done that better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, sometimes it's hard to know how people are going to react.
Oh, I would say all the time, you know. I've had people accuse me in the past of having written articles in order that they would go viral.
Mm-hmm.
Well, um, you know, if I knew how to do that, I would never not do that. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know. I think the best thing you can do is as soon as something's really hot in the news, just to write something about it. But sometimes, like I said, you don't have an opinion on it. You probably shouldn't do that if you don't really know.
It's also sort of difficult to anticipate like what it is that people are actually thinking about. Like sometimes the big news items that are the headlines in the New York Times, normal people are not actually don't actually care
Mhm.
about. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, and there'll be some item on, you know, page A19, you know, a tiny item that you draw attention to that people, you know, do really care
Mhm.
about. So I mean, there's a sense in which you have to be a curator of the news in addition to everything else.
Yeah, that's true. I think people really only care about things that affect them personally. So if you could try to make something personally, people respond to it. Like I worked in DC for a while, and a lot of the stuff they talked about, no one outside of the DC bubble cared about it. Especially when you were talking about like bills, really specific things in bills. I'm like, nobody cares about that.
Well, how do you decide what matters? The personal issues, right? The things that affect people's lives. Yeah.
I mean, it really depends on the issue, but I think sometimes libertarians don't do a good job at that. They focus on numbers and stats and stuff, but they don't actually tell people stories about actually how is this going to affect them? Like we talk a lot about like the Federal Reserve, inflation, all that stuff. That really affects people on a day-to-day basis, but sometimes our messaging doesn't reflect that.
Oh, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, that's always been the problem with libertarians. You know, we talk to, you know, too abstractly, as if we think that liberty doesn't actually matter to people, whereas it's really, when we're talking about human liberty, that's the very, you know, pith of life itself, as Mises used to say. And you know, we have to find ways, you know, to communicate this. I mean, you're obviously doing a good job of this. What do you think about? Because somebody asked me to ask you this, the role of your humor and making your videos watchable and digestible. Do you think that's important? Because you obviously, I mean, you're sort of naturally funny anyway. But you know,
Yeah, yeah, because a lot of I call them normal people. They don't care about politics. They think it's boring. Why should I care? So I've tried to make my videos funny-ish. I mean, sometimes it's hard when you're talking about these subjects and you're trying to be educational too and try to make them funny on top. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but at least try to make them entertaining. Like I put on silly makeup and silly costumes and stuff because it at least gets people's attention. So
Do you
even
have a big Do you have a big box like right next to
yeah,
you
it's
that's got
actually
like
right over there. I got a
mustaches
bunch
and
of stuff
hats?
from Kansas City. Yeah. So even if they don't agree with what I'm saying, at least they're like entertained. They're like, this girl's kind of weird, but I'm still watching her videos. That's what I've kind of learned to do because I started watching other YouTubers, especially liberal YouTubers. They do that all the time and people watch. So I decided to do something like at first it was very kind of small, the humor, and then people liked it. So I kept kind of pushing the envelope to see how far I can go. And there hasn't been a limit yet. So I'll continue to do it.
So, do you keep your Jeffrey Tucker costume in a box next to you?
Yes, it should be over there with the bow tie.
I laughed so hard when you did me. I mean, in a weird sense, like I don't know. It's spooky to watch somebody else like caricature you,
Yeah.
and
I'm,
and more or less get it right. You know, it made me laugh. Have you always been sort of a funny person? I mean, like in high school, did everybody think you were just like tremendously funny?
no.
No.
A lot of people thought I was weird, believe it or not. But no, my family has always been really funny. Like around the dinner table, we were always just cracking jokes and making fun of each other, really. So that's kind of where I learned it. Like I have an older brother who was always funnier than me, and that bothered me because I wanted to be funnier than him. So yeah, that's what it is.
Now, do you consider that what you're doing now with by the way, has your site actually launched for real?
Yeah, last week it launched.
Okay. Um, is it kind of do you consider it a risk that you're taking? I mean, do you feel like you're in an entrepreneurial role at this point? I mean, are you feeling that sense that this is it, it's either going to work or it's not, that you're throwing everything at this? I mean, what is your sense of that, trying out entrepreneurship maybe for the first time?
Yeah, it's a big risk. In my adult-ish life, I've always worked for nonprofits. So I've always gotten that salary every 2 weeks. Like I have a paycheck and I know that money's coming. Now it's kind of like that money's not coming. I have to actively seek that money and make it come in just so I can, eat food and pay my rent, keep a roof over my head. So it is risky, but I figure that I talk so much about entrepreneurship that I should at least try to practice it to see if there's a market out there. Let's try this for a while. If it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. And I'll find something else to do, hopefully, but at least give it a try while I'm young and I could actually fall back on something.
And isn't it interesting how once you become in the position of being an entrepreneur, sort of owner, right? So there's no as you say, automatic income stream.
Yeah.
And there's no limits to the upside, but there's also basically you can also hit rock bottom too.
Yeah.
At that point, you no longer care about like working hours, terms of employment, vacation time, 9 to 5, all the things that govern, people's W-2 lives, suddenly don't matter anymore, right?
Yeah, it's been nice. I've been working at home for 2 weeks, and I can wake up when I want, go to sleep when I want, like work when I want, like take breaks, do this, run errands. Like it's a whole different world. Like it is kind of risky. It kind of makes me nervous, like what's going to happen. But at the same time, like you have so much more freedom. It's like it's amazing.
Are you pretty attached to your internet traffic? How much is coming in, and the data and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Since last week, I've been looking at how much traffic I'm getting and all that. Yeah, we'll see.
There's a lot of competition out there
Hmm.
for people's time, and I've had the sense that there's a great deal of pressure on the World Wide Web these days as a result of all the new entertainment media you know, Netflix, you know, which is always fabulous. You know, there's always something wonderful going on Netflix. So I think it's increasingly difficult to get an audience.
Yeah, I think you have to offer people something that they've never seen before. With me, I have the whole libertarian thing, which a lot of people aren't used to. A lot of people don't know what side I'm on. They're like, I don't understand you. Like, you're talking about Obamacare one day and then legalizing drugs the next. What is happening here? So that's something at least new and exciting. And like I talked about before, like the humor, I don't think that's been used in politics that much, especially on the libertarian side. So I don't want to just talk.
There's a market opening for that, really, right? I mean, well, Reason does some of that, but yeah, I agree with that. There's not nearly enough humor in the libertarian world.
No, a lot of people don't get jokes either. They take everything very seriously. But yeah, like I think it's important not to just talk in talking points like a lot of people do. Like, this is what libertarians believe, because I mean that gets boring after a while. You're like, okay, I already know what your opinion is. So if you bring something new to the table, hopefully you can have that audience there that's going to be loyal to you and your whatever you're doing, whatever projects you're working on.
What is your feeling about the upcoming political season? Do you see it as an opportunity? I mean, how high is your own personal tolerance for electoral politics? I find in my own case, you know, it ebbs and flows. I've recently sort of gotten a little more interested in it as a spectator sport than I have been in the past. What's your feeling about that? I mean, a lot of libertarians just have no interest whatsoever. Other people are consumed by it, you know, completely. Where do you fit on that scale?
I do have some interest, but after a while, I just kind of get burnt out. Like, it's just too much for me. I'm more of a policy person. I've never been extremely political. I think a lot of people think I'm more political than I actually am. So I just get burnt out. It's like, okay, you're not really telling the truth. You're lying. I'm more about kind of the policy ideas more so.
The rationale for this policy, foreign policy, whatever. What is the area that you get criticized by libertarians on the most?
Criticized by libertarians. A lot of it is politics, but I really don't talk about politics that much. I think a lot of them say, "Oh, you're a Rand Paul hack" and stuff like that, but I really don't talk about that much. Or I'm a Republican, I'm a GOP. I don't really talk about that much. So I probably get criticized the most for politics. Besides that, maybe some social issues. Like I'm libertarian on social issues, but maybe I explain them in a different way. Like, I'll say, drugs are bad, but they should be legalized. And people are like, why do you think drugs are bad? Things like that I'll get criticized about, but I mean, it is
Why
what.
do you think drugs are bad?
Well, they're talking about like marijuana and stuff, so really not that bad. Well, I'm like, I'm trying to explain why somebody who doesn't like marijuana would still want it to be legalized or decriminalized.
Which is, yeah, and the reason why it's probably criminalized now is that a lot of people don't like it, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's an audience worth reaching for sure. I feel that way about methamphetamine myself, actually. I mean, I want to legalize, absolutely everything, and I don't believe in any exceptions at all. You agree with that?
I don't do meth, no.
No, but you agree that all drugs should be legal, right?
Sure, eventually. I mean, that would be the ideal, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
No, it's not going to happen anytime soon. But we are making progress in the area of marijuana, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Who would you say your top intellectual influences are? Did you ever consider yourself to be a conservative? I mean, most people are not born libertarians, or maybe they are, but I mean, libertarians usually have a story about their lives, like I came from the left or I came from the right.
Yeah, I grew up very conservatively. I found libertarianism when I was about 15, but before that, I was pretty much a neocon. I just really didn't know any different. I knew I wasn't a liberal. I knew I didn't like communism or any of that. I was always big into entrepreneurship myself, so I thought I was a conservative because that's all I knew. And then, of course, George W. Bush came along, and I thought, well, I'm a Republican, I'm a conservative, so I have to support him. And then he started all those wars, and I was like, well, I'm a Republican, I'm definitely not a Democrat, so I have to support him. All that kind of silly stuff when I was in high school. When I was 15, I found the word libertarian on an online forum. I had never heard the word before, and I Googled it. And it said basically people who want maximum freedom. I thought, well, how is this different from conservatism? Because I thought they wanted freedom, but I looked more into it. I realized that libertarians are more consistent in their views. I found Ron Paul a few years later, but he's been probably my biggest influence. Even though I basically agreed with him, he really explained to me how to present libertarianism, especially in foreign policy. So he's been my biggest influence so far, and that's kind of how I became a libertarian.
Yeah, I mean, it becomes a problem for people who are conservative. Now, you were born long after, I suppose, that you came of age after the Cold War ended. So the big issues for foreign policy was the war on terror, right?
Yeah.
And and it was hard for you to work through this idea that the U.S. policies are actually making the situation worse, which requires like 2 or 3 steps of logic, right? And that's very difficult for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think after 9/11, I was angry, like a lot of people, and, it was an emotional response. So we have to go after these bad guys. We have to kill them all that kind of emotional response. But I didn't look into it more. I didn't realize that the U.S. government were going after people who had nothing to do with 9/11. Like, I didn't have the connection. I just thought, let's go get them. I was pissed about 9/11. Like, I grew up right outside of DC, so like I knew a lot of people whose family worked in the Pentagon who were affected by this. Like it made me mad, but I didn't look into it. I didn't do my research until after I became a libertarian. I realized kind of the concept of blowback, which Ron Paul talked about, and I was like, whoa, it was just mind opening.
It's very strange to me, Julie, because I remember the days after 9/11. Yeah, I'll tell you what my first thought was after that happened, like within the hour after the news had leaked, was that and this gives you an insight into how a little bit naive I tend to be about these things, but I had my first thought was, well, at long last, now the American people will see the downside to imperial politics. And we'll understand that there's, that this sort of vengeance attitude that U.S. policy has inspired is now personally affecting us. There'll be an immediate mass movement to pull out of these regions, to stop sticking the stick in the beehive, and to rethink the way we're approaching the world. And in retrospect, I mean, this is the dumbest imaginable thought I ever had. I mean, far from that having been the mainstream conclusion, most Americans, imagined the U.S. to be this, peaceful, wonderful commercial republic that, for some insane, irrational reason, was targeted by a bunch of, fundamentalist wackos for no apparent reason. So therefore, we had to go out and kill anyone and everyone, in faraway countries with funny names. I mean, that seemed to be the average response of the average person.
Yeah, I was in 8th grade when 9/11 happened. I had no idea the U.S. government was in the Middle East even. I had learned nothing about it in my middle school. I remember thinking, who the heck would do this? Like, we're the U.S., we're so freedomy and peaceful, and what have we ever done to you guys? And I remember thinking, like, how dumb it was for anyone to attack us. Like, why? I remember thinking that. And, we heard from all these politicians who were saying, they attack us because we're so free, and, they're jealous of us, and that's why they attacked us. And I believed all that stuff because it's kind of stuff that you want to hear. You want to hear that your country's awesome. You want to hear that those people have no rationale and they're just crazy monsters. And yeah, I fell for it. Fell for it all.
To some extent, I think, a sense that people have that we project our own lives onto the life of our country, like the Borowski family never hurt anybody, you're just going about your business. So you imagine that must be true for the country as a whole. And we identify ourselves with our nation in a sense. And I think that's the dominant attitude. I think most Americans are still to this day under the impression that America is the country, of barbecues and Netflix and, church-going people and that's it. We're strangely unable to distinguish between the American people and the ruling class that constitutes the, permanent bureaucracy with its, bases in whatever it is, 180 countries around the world. We're almost unable to think like that.
Yeah, that's when I talk about foreign policy, I try to say the U.S. government bombed people. The U.S. government is to blame instead of saying we're to blame or, we bombed them, we're at fault, because people get defensive when you use the word we because they think, oh, you're blaming me. Like, what did I do? So I try to separate it, especially because conservatives, they tend not to like the federal government. They distrust them. So when you really kind of separate it, when you say the federal government or the word Washington did this, like conservatives are like, yeah, those evil people in Washington, as opposed to when you say, we, and then they get defensive.
It's a good distinction. To some extent, I too am bugged by the sort of use of we to describe this weird amalgamation of government and the people. And yet, even then, there is a sense in which, the culture as a whole does bear some responsibility, don't you think? I mean, if people are truly unaware, isn't that to some extent, a regrettable situation?
Yeah, I think some people are somewhat aware, but the problem is they think, okay, what can I do about this? Like, I'm just one person in the middle of the country. If I were to care, how would I actually change anything? So I think there is that kind of attitude, like, what's the point of caring? I just something to throw out
So
there.
I totally agree with that, and to me, actually, what you just said is extremely profound because, ultimately in our lives we have to care about. We should only care about the things we can do something about, and if we can't do anything about it, what's the point of caring about it? And then I think this is actually what discourages many people from being involved in politics, and it also tends to lead to a certain burnout, on the part of people who get like really involved in politics and realize this is a complete waste of my time because, whatever I think doesn't matter in the slightest bit.
Yeah, that's true. I think you just have to explain to people how they can actually make a difference. I think the internet has been amazing in that regard because there's so low barriers to entry. Like I talk about, I made a YouTube channel. Like anyone can make a YouTube channel. Like anyone can make a blog these days. Like there are so much stuff you could actually do. And I think a lot of people don't recognize they could actually have an impact.
Well, you're enormously talented, and I think you have had an impact, and I know you feel that way. But for a lot of people, they feel like whatever it is they believe themselves doesn't actually matter unless they can do something amazing, like establish JulieBorowski.com or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I sort of disagree with this attitude, actually. Like there's a lot of things that people can do in their own lives to realize their ideals outside of the political system, in the realm of education, entrepreneurship, or just living more smarter, freer lives. To me, this is where libertarianism has really sort of failed, I would say, and not personalizing the project of human liberty like the left has done. And to some extent, the right has done this. Libertarians have not been very good about personalizing the liberty agenda, giving campaigns for specific choices that people should make in their lives to live freer lives. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you made a good point. I think it's probably something that I need to work on more so too. Like, I'm more of an internet activist. That's what I do. Yeah, I think you made a good point. Maybe like education, like homeschooling your kids, teaching them
Exactly.
ways. Like, I went to the LP convention a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about, food freedom and gardening and ways
Yeah.
they can kind of get away from the state. Like, it was eye-opening because I haven't really heard that many of arguments about that.
No, Julie, I think this is a really very interesting area that's ripe for libertarians to really work on and think hard about. It's neat that happened to you at the LP. I mean, like for me, I'm not exactly into like raising my own food. In fact, I see no point in that whatsoever.
Yeah.
Although I do have on the other side of the room, and I might get up and show it to you, a tomato that I grew myself.
Nice.
Yeah, that's very exciting to me. But yeah, but it doesn't make me feel freer that I got a tomato out of my tomato plant. But specific things like homeschooling, of course, is a no-brainer. But there are many things like trying out peer-to-peer applications that you might, supporting businesses that are actually decentralizing the world and disintermediating the world, like using like Airbnb. I mean, I have to tell you, I feel better about my life when I use Airbnb as versus stay in a regulated, taxed, cartelized hotel. And that's a small choice, but it's actually, I think, a choice that contributes to making the world a freer place. Not that hotels are the enemy. Okay, I'm not saying that, but supporting P2P, structures of enterprise does make a positive contribution to the world. And whatever, with hacking your shower head or turning up your water heater. I've written about this stuff, but I think that these are ways that that things the libertarians can do to actually make their lives freer and make a contribution to the world, in the same sense that like the left has a whole range of things that they want you to do, from recycle to boycotting this company, or bike not drive, and so on. Libertarians need more of these kinds of real world things.
Huh. Sorry, my cat swatting at me.
You're what?
I have two cats, and one cat is swatting at me below the table because I'm not petting her.
You can lift her up and pet her. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, see, she went away.
To some extent, Julie. By the way, have you read, have you ever read Atlas Shrugged, for example? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You have? Mm-hmm. Okay, because I'm only halfway through it now, so just so you understand. Yeah. So I'm not, but one of the things that stands out to me most in the book is just how personal her message is, right? So she's not just speaking to a political system, but she's personalizing the Liberty Project, into a life project. It's not just about agitating for this or that policy, but it's about living a certain way. So that was the idea of Liberty.me, is that that has been its central core, is that we're gonna find ways to make the world a freer place. And to my way of thinking, this is a much more constructive way for libertarians to sort of go about their business, rather than just forever shouting at the government. You should change, you should shrink, you should be different, than you are, and be more like the way I want you to be. You know what I mean?
But isn't there a worry that the government's going to crack down on you? Like, I think you probably want to stay out of jail, so.
That's true. There has to be an element of prudence there, right?
Yeah.
But even in your time in Washington, you must have seen many people get involved in libertarianism and then sort of burn out. Do you know what I mean? I mean, they get bored with it and just move on?
Burnout or sellout. I saw a lot of people who came to DC and they had really good intentions. They were very, liberty minded. They came to change things to make the world a better place. And then somebody offered them more money to work at some organization. Some politician offered them more money to work for them. So they went with that. I saw that quite often, and it was disappointing to me.
What do you find disappointing about that? I mean, just sort of choosing the lifestyle of DC over the idealism of libertarianism.
Well, they weren't working for pro-liberty causes anymore. They were working against them, but somebody gave them more money to work for a certain politician who wasn't friendly to liberty. But they had a bigger paycheck. So I saw that a lot from people who really just kind of career climbers. That was disappointing because I knew a lot of those people personally. I believe they believed in the cause, and then to watch them kind of sell out. I'm not gonna name any names, but it was disappointing.
Yeah, I can see why that'd be sort of devastating because you start with these high ideals.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it turns out to just be a career, basically.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I had to move out of DC, actually. I saw too much. That was my whole experience when I first went to DC the first time, to discover that because I grew up, I became a conservative right before I was a libertarian, and to discover that the great conservative leaders were actually just glorified job holders in the District of Columbia. It was pretty alarming. Yeah. Well, tell me what you have in mind for your channel over the next in the first 30 days.
Next 30 days on my website, I'm just going to put out a bunch of content. So I'm just pumping it out, whatever is kind of current. Like I did a piece on freedom of speech today. I'm going to do content tomorrow about the right to try drugs that have not been approved by the FDA for terminally ill people. Like that's something I'm really passionate about. A bunch of different content, more YouTube videos, whatever comes to my mind. I'm really excited about it though.
Are you going to do anything on cryptocurrency? I know you have somewhat of an interest in Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should do more of that. I'm always kind of afraid people are going to be like, well, what does she know? Like, I'm not an expert on it. So I feel like I'm kind of intimidated by the Bitcoin crowd. So I don't want them to like interrogate me. I'll be like, I don't know. Like it's so cool to me, but I don't know the finer details and the technology. So I'm more of a learner, I would say, than a educator on that topic.
Julie, all of us are learners on everything. Bitcoin can be intimidating. Just probably the word cryptography is the one that sets you back a little bit, right?
What?
Yeah, no, but I think it would be brilliant. Are you welcoming outside contributions, or are you going to try to keep it basically just your stuff?
We'll see for now. I'm open to the idea.
We are. I don't know if we have questions that we have time for. I hadn't really been following the chat. Have you been following the chat at all?
I've been going back and forth. Let's see.
Wait a minute, you haven't been listening to what I've been asking?
No, I've been going back. I've been mostly watching you, but I've just been going back just to see, who's there. Anyone say anything on any.
Okay. Well, it's a wonderful opportunity to have you on Liberty.me, and for any listeners, I mean, you're a member, and I know you love it, and
I love it.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, it's a very cool place, and I hope that anybody who's watching who's not a member will at least give us a try. It's a fun community. It's so wonderful to be part of a civil discussion. Do you know what I mean, Julie?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because it's not always civil. I think you have a little bit of a thicker skin than most of us do. Like, for example, I never do Twitter wars.
I love it.
You love Twitter wars?
Yeah. I just love to debate online. I don't know. I have a problem maybe, but I like to do it.
That's so cute. Well, yeah, I don't know. I find it a little bit alarming. It's, you know, sometimes, not all the time. Well, actually, pretty much all the time. I pretty much don't debate online unless I'm in a bad mood, you know, which does happen from time to time. So, but the cool thing about Liberty.me is that the culture is diverse. There's like a lot of different kinds of libertarians, and you know, there's not just one kind of libertarian. There are many, many types of libertarians, but everybody seems to get along and learn from each other. I love it when people disagree with me on Liberty.me because I can have a real discussion with them instead of just like, you know, pure insults. So that's yeah, you know what I mean, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're welcome to come back anytime, Julie. It's wonderful to have you. I'm so glad.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, and it's fun too that you're going all out again. It's julieborowski.com, and if there's anything we can do or I can do to promote you in the future, just let me know. And
I appreciate that.
When's the next time we're going to see you? Going to Pork Fest? Are you going to Liberty Fest? Where you?
I'm going to Pork Fest. It was just announced. I've never been before. My first time.
Are you going to camp?
No, I'm not a camper. I was a Girl Scout for many years. I'm just kind of over camping.
That's me too. Yeah. I couldn't do the camping thing, but I'll probably see you there. I hope to see you at Freedom Fest. Yeah. All the best, Julie. Take care, my friend.
Bye.
Bye-bye. A conference going on called the International Students for Liberty something. And I'd never heard of this group, and I thought, well, okay, you know, all right. So I went next door. Did you go to that? Did you go to the ISFLC that year?
Yeah, I've been going for like 5 or 6 years.
Okay, so I went that year, and I walked in and I said, hi, gosh, I'm just, you know, stumbled in off the street. Is it possible for me to attend this conference? And the lady said, well, I don't know. I mean, maybe so. She checked it out and she came back. She said, yeah, it's $60. So I wrote a check, you know, and started attending. And then you know, a few minutes later, somebody came whispering to her, I guess, information of some relevance, that I was not just some person who stumbled in off the street, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, so she was mortified. It's very silly. So silly. So you're opening up your new channel. Tell me the story. What's going on?
Sure. So a couple of weeks ago, I actually left FreedomWorks to go freelance. So I've started my own website. It's julieborowski.com. It's my name. So I'm going to put content out like every single day, whether it's an article or a video. So I'm still doing my YouTube channel, but hopefully I can do at least 1 or 2 videos a week. So I'm really excited about that. And, you know, I can say whatever I want, which is awesome. I can talk about, you know, the current issues of the day, whatever that be. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I just started on my own actually in college. I had Windows Movie Maker, and I would just make silly videos for my friends, like on their birthdays and stuff of me doing silly stuff, and I would edit it on there and I would post it on their Facebook wall. So I knew how to do that. And I started a YouTube channel. I just started to do the same. Like I have no professional knowledge of it. I just kind of learned it myself.
And when I'm curious about this, because, well, it's a little bit of a puzzle. Sometimes I'll write out a text, but, you know, and then start the camera, but I don't always remember what I wrote, and I find it awkward to sort of read and also be on camera. Are you, when you do your videos, are you reading, or are you kind of being extemporaneous?
No, I write everything beforehand so I know what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it. Then I just kind of say it in my head and what order, and I just do it that way. Yeah, if you read it, it just looks like you're reading. It's just like, blah, 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 blah. It's not entertaining. So I try to memorize it the best I can. Like, it's not perfect sometimes. So that's why I like videos, because you can at least go over it again as opposed to live interviews. which is
Well,
always
that's true.
good.
Because all your videos always have these little cuts and things which you've
Yeah.
managed to make
People like that
interesting.
on YouTube. It like
Yeah.
gets their attention.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's a funny style, but it's also advantageous to just to keep on topic and to be able to cut and paste what's good versus what didn't work, right?
Definitely. Ooh, it's live.
Julie.
Hey,
Julie, we're live.
we're live? Okay, I'm gonna tweet it out now.
Okay. See, I mean, how many different places can you be in at one time? I mean, you can be live here, but now that you're live, you have to say, "Oh, excuse me, I can't be live anymore. I have to tweet."
Okay, hold on. Let me close this. Got it. Okay, now I'm here.
I know. So there's a book I read several years ago that said something like, it was, the title of it was something like somewhere else. And the thesis is that we're always somewhere else now, other than where we are, It's some atavistic reactionary, techno resenting book. But here you are. Julie, the last time I think you and I actually sat down for a serious conversation was about 3 years ago.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, you were about 16 years old or something like that, and I was
Oh, at the
20.
Freedom Works office?
Yeah,
That was a couple years ago. I
that was
remember
a few
that,
years.
yeah.
Yeah. No, there was a funny thing because, well, we hung out, right, and we talked about entrepreneurship and enterprise, and it was fun. And then at that meeting, somebody said, now that you're here, you really should go next door because there's every day is very ambitious. You mean every weekday?
Well, I was always working on the weekend, making my YouTube channel, so I'm kind of used to it. Yeah, it's Liberty 24/7.
That's so cool. Some people find that editing the video takes so long. How did you go through your sort of learning process as a video editor? It's one thing to turn on a camera and make a video.
A lot of people don't realize how long it takes just to make one video. Even if it's just like a 3 or 4 minute video, it takes a while because first you have to write what you're going to say. We got to think of a topic first and how can I say this in a way that's short. Because my videos, I try to make them really short and to the point. So I got to write this out and then I got to record it. And I record what I say a few different times just in case I mispronounce something, I'm talking too fast, things like that. And then I have to edit it. Editing is the hardest part because I have to look, okay, what sounds good? Am I making a better face here or a better face there? I got to put music on there. I got to do text and I have to make it all look good. And then I put it out. So editing is the hardest part. Filming doesn't take that long. I like to write. Writing is my passion. That's my favorite part. But yeah, editing takes a while.
Where did you learn video editing? It's just sort of a hit and miss. I mean, sort of trial and error, or what? I mean, you're not a trained video person.
No, I kind of.
So Julie, I'm curious about this because lots of people sort of start these kind of projects and get demoralized at the amount of flurry of attacks, or the way in which people sort of really critical, and how you become sort of the subject of flame wars and that sort of thing. How do you think you have a personality that somehow immunizes you to some extent, or did you have to learn to develop thicker skin, or how do you deal with, because I mean obviously you're saying things that lead to a lot of frenzy, opposition, and that sort of thing. How do you process that and make that part of your life in a way that preserves normalcy, or do you?
You grow thicker skin over time. When I first started, I was kind of hesitant because YouTube comments are very terrible. They're very personal. So when I first started my channel, I would get those comments, and it would affect me. When people would call me, "Oh, you're ugly," "Your voice is terrible," like those things. Like, I had never really heard people say that about me. You know, when you talk to people in person, they're generally pretty nice to you. They might talk behind your back, but to hear it, or at least to read it, it was like, what? But over the years, you just get used to it. Like, there's nothing I haven't heard about me. And in a way, it makes you more confident about yourself because you're just like, I've heard this before. And some people